Hey, how's it going?
Hey everybody, doing pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. Okay, come on. I need to find the share button so it turns off. Ah, been a slow start this morning, so
How was everybody's weekend?
uh pretty good. I mean, just you and me, so we can we had a D&D game planned for Sunday and it canceled, so um I got other things done, but still not the same. No wait.
Nice. Pretty good. My employee and I were working for 2.5 weeks straight until 11 p.m. trying to figure out this one issue. And we finally got it solved last Friday. Turns out DigitalOcean closes its vault key connections if you don't use them after a certain period of time.
Ah,
So then you try to connect it with Celery, and then it's closed, and then it results in a timeout issue.
sure. Right.
But we were doing like RCA for like the past 2 weeks, and we finally narrowed it down. And now I'm taking my employee to a Michelin-star restaurant next month.
That's fun. Uh
Mhm.
what do you guys do?
We're a mortgage tech startup, so we help mortgage brokers just be able to establish eligibility for their incoming leads. Leads being like just like your basic loan applications, and then provide restructuring advice if available.
Gotcha. Welcome, Matt. We are just getting started. A little slow to start today. So,
Yeah, no worries.
what brings you here?
I have no idea how I came across this link, but other than looking for what the heck fractional is, I'm seeing that term a lot
Right.
and being in the career transition currently, trying to learn it, understand it. What is it? Am I part of it? Am I not part of it?
Cool.
The
Yeah,
idea.
I've shared this around a couple of fractional communities. Plus, there's a LinkedIn event, so could have been any of those places you found it, I suppose.
Yeah. Like I said, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But like, all right, well, let's give it a shot. What's going on?
Awesome. Ying, well, so you mentioned you're kind of in a mortgage tech startup. What brings you to a fractional open coffee?
I found this event via RLS. I'm a fractional CTO, so I'm looking to just carry them through from the 0 to 1 stage through maybe like a million ARR.
Okay.
I think in one of your blog posts you talked about the CEO until you hire or CTO until you hire one. I'm
Right.
probably one of those.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
Wait,
But
did you hold on, Ying? Did you say RLS?
Yeah,
Is that the RAND Slack community?
yeah.
yeah.
Then okay, there you go. Then that's how I found you. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, I have been sharing links to this in the I wrote something or something like that
Mhm.
because I'm posting these up on YouTube every week. So number 6 goes live. Actually, probably went live about an hour ago on YouTube, and I'll post about it this afternoon. And this is number 12. So welcome aboard. So Yang, did you make it to the fractional lean coffee on Thursday?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think I signed up for these and I signed up for the regular CTO coffee chats.
Okay. So maybe I've seen you on the CTO copy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Cool. I knew like your face was familiar, but sometimes you see a lot of people.
It's distinctively round. I hope.
um.
Could be better. It could be distinctively bald.
Right. That's not bald. Come on now.
It's getting there.
You're aspiring to be.
Yeah, yeah. Whether I want to or not.
Right. Well. Also. Ying, what do you think of fractional? Kind of what is that to you?
It's a good question. Um, I've heard fractional kind of like in a very, very traditional sense. So you're not like, it's kind of like an in between a consultant and somebody who comes on board full time. So it's when a company wants to hire somebody who has dedication of a full time employee, but doesn't have, I think, the ability to financially make a full time commitment. So I think typically like a fractional lends their experience in like a couple of niche areas, and then they go from there. I'm kind of in a unique situation where I'm kind of full time on one client.
Okay.
So technically, I can be considered like a full time employee. I'm
More like
paid
an
at
interim CTO in that case.
yeah, yeah, and it's difficult, I guess, in the early stages when you're an operator to kind of multiplex between different contract roles. So I'm kind of like I'm just doing full time here. And I'd say I probably just want to niche down in other areas where possible. So I know I want to be staying around in B2B SaaS. I probably want to be focusing on the fintech, maybe like prop tech, lend tech, mortgage tech spaces. I know I have a deep expertise in data, like data engineering, big data processing. And I know I have like I want to be specializing in that early stage. So like the 0 to 1 million ARR.
Okay. Awesome. That's a lot of focus. That's a lot more focus than most people are willing to admit to. So,
The hypothesis for now. I'm looking
oh,
at that.
well, of course. It is always a hypothesis, right? All strategy is a hypothesis, right? You say we're going to try something. And
Hmm.
so here is a business strategy around trying to be more specific and niche into something. Even that itself is just a hypothesis. It's a theory. It's a attempt, right? Um, so well, cool. I mean, but hey, you've gotten something, right? Now let's figure out how to like can you make a positioning statement out of that and all, and things of that nature. But you're full time and you're busy, so this isn't something you have to rush at. It's something you can spend some time working on.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Cool. Um,
Mhm.
so Matt, my take on fractional, because my network is filled with fractional CTOs, right? A lot of the people I talk to are CTOs in the tech space. I've been working to branch out as I've built my own, the For Fractionals Slack community, to be more than just CTOs. So I'm trying to learn from other people, right? Um, but to me, fractional is really it's not always it's not executive. So there are some definitions of fractional that say you can only be a fractional if you're an executive. And I disagree with that entirely. It does generally come from being in a leadership senior type position, but that I don't believe that has to necessarily be an executive position. Um, But this is basically getting more specialized than being a freelancer or a contractor, right? And you're targeting a higher leverage role, a higher leverage position. But it's basically exactly that, what it sounds like, taking a part of what you would do in the full-time job, packaging that up in a way that you can do that for someone that either can't afford, right? As Ying suggested, right? They don't have enough budget, or maybe they already have somebody, but they're missing your piece. You don't have to be like as a fractional CTO, for instance, you don't have to be their only CTO. You can be a fractional CTO as your marketing title and come in as an advisor, a coach, a mentor, a shadow, even a lead engineer, or you could be a VPE, even though you're a fractional CTO, you come in to be a fractional VPE for a team. It's really about, or an engineering manager, whatever they need that you can fulfill that you want to do. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think where I've seen it is, people who are fractional HR who essentially seem to be working with a number of different companies.
Yep.
So I guess between all of the companies, they're working full time, but they're not working as a full timer or full time, full 40 hours
Right.
with any one company.
Exactly. Because a lot of times in that case, a lot of times it's that the teams that they're working with aren't large enough to need somebody full time. It's not even necessarily about budget, it's often about need, right? As you know, in the HR space, the job that you do is it gets busier and busier as the company gets larger and larger, and you have more and more responsibilities, just like in a CTO or any other leadership role. And then that breaks out, and then you have higher people below you to take on some of that responsibility. Like a fractional HR might be handling all of managing outbound outside recruiters, managing inside recruiters. They may be doing the whole job of a recruiter as while they're an HR person, or they may not be involved in hiring at all, right? And they may be helping to establish. I am not an HR expert, so establish policies and all of those parts. They know, and so it's really about like what works for you, and then that overlap with what works for your client and what they need in the moment. But ideally, in an ideal world, you probably are working for multiple clients. Certainly within a span of time. Like Ying, I kind of mentioned he's basically in an interim, what we like to call an interim role, where you're full time, you're doing all of the job that company needs, and the expectation is eventually you will be replaced with a full-time employee. This could be because they've lost one, or they haven't hired one, or they're just realizing that they need to fill this role.
Yep. I think for me, like the company considers me like a co-founder, and I think they want me to stay, but I don't know if I really want to be able to stay for one company given the size of my equity stake. So I
Right.
think my goal, my long term goal is like figure out how companies get from the 0 to 1 stage, go through pivot hell, get through the idea maze, get to GTM and PMF, and just learn on somebody else's dime.
Sure. I mean, that's always the job, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting to say, okay, you want to focus on that 0 to 1 million range, and that because if you spend some time doing it here, you move on to the next company, you are focusing on that specific stage of business and the specific problems that they're going to have, which are different from when they have 500 engineers and, a team of marketers and all of the other things. So you get to actually build expertise in that specific space and then talk about those problems. So when it comes to marketing, you can say, "Hey, I understand what happens when you go from $0 revenue to $1 revenue, and what happens after that, because you're there, you're seeing it."
Exactly. When you're like in the customer discovery sprints, when you're learning about customer feedback, you kind of understand like here's the terminology, here's kind of what customers are saying. You can advise GTM, I think, based off of that. So I think it's a really natural fit to go from I think where I am at right now, like a interim CTO to a technical advisor, because you kind of understand like you built out the core product, you have the trust of the founding team. You can kind of like just pivot off and like go do something else while
Right.
like having high confidence that your contract will be renewed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely can happen. Especially as because when you get them to a point, they're going to need someone to take them to the next stage. And this is a problem that we see, especially in the CTO seat. I'm sure this happens. I know this happens in the CEO seat. I'm sure it happens in the COO and the CFO, that you need a different set of experiences to move you through that. And it's possible for a person to learn and grow through all of that, but it's not always the best use of money. Right? To bring in the CEO that has the network and the cachet to take you to that next step. Was it on? I think it was on the Seattle Angels call that John Seacrest was talking to a guy, and kind of started. The guy started to realize that building a $500,000 business and a $5 million business, or a 500,000 and a $500 million business for the founder, it's the same amount of work. It's a different it's a different workflow, right? The things that you do are different, but it's the same amount of work. So you just make different decisions and go that route. And it's a very interesting perspective to think about when we look at the different stages of a business and why someone would want someone aligned with that stage of the business. And why a CTO becomes a point gets to the point where a CTO or a CEO is no longer the fit. Um, so
Yeah, I think my value prop is like ultimately technical co-founders are great. You have to be able to attract them though. And they are very expensive when it comes to like equity, like your dilution. So when you're bringing on like interim CTO, like in the very early stages, you keep most of the equity for yourself. You pay
Right.
a decent amount of money upfront in order to maintain that lack of dilution. And then like you get through the most dilutive rounds, I think, of funding or fundraising, and then you're kind of like good to go. You keep most of the long term benefits. So that's my value prop that I sell to
Yeah, that's
customers.
I think that's a good one. And it's something people don't recognize. I whenever I'm talking to somebody who says I'm looking for a fractional, I'm talking to you, Noel. Um, we had this conversation last week that you know, if you're looking to get a fractional and you want to pay them in equity, then you're looking for a co-founder. And that co-founder needs to be they need to be as in love with the product as you are, or the service, or the industry or the space, because they're not. If they're not, then they're not going to be doing it for equity and for love, the same way that you are. But they also are going to need, because the investment they're going to bring to this business, because it is an investment working for equity, is going to be just as valuable as you, the original founder. If they bring all of the things to the business that you don't have, and they do the same amount of work, there's often a feeling of that, well, I did the work to get it this far, and I need to have more equity. But those are the early steps. That's the baby steps. You haven't even gotten on the ladder yet at that point. The rest of the real work happens from here. And in 10 years, that first little bit of work is lost in noise. And so bringing someone in who will help you get there is so valuable. And but as someone to come in as an equity heavy, often equity only co-founder, they've got to be willing to take that risk. And that risk has to have the same upside that you did as a founder. So Matt, what space are you in? What do you do?
Sorry, I was just looking at a email notification that I didn't want to get, but I'm actually in between roles right now, so I'm trying to find my next steps. I do consultant training in the agile space, so I've been a
Okay.
scrum master, coach, that kind of work. So
A lot of folks in that consultant training space are arguably just they're fractionals with a different label. Um,
that's kind of what I thought. It sounded, and a little that I've looked it up seem to be slightly different, but very similar, tangential. That seems to be my word this week is tangent. Um, so that's kind of why I was, oh, well, let me learn more and see if this is, a different way of going or a different avenue that I can explore for my next steps.
yeah, and a lot of the way we approach running the business, being a soloist or being a 2 or 3 person shop, depending on the approach you take, um, and the way we end up pricing and packaging and marketing and acquiring customers and finding customers, all of that, it overlaps across everything from the startup freelancer who's just said, I'm a freelancer, I don't even know what that means. It's all the same. There's, and all of the knowledge work, selling knowledge, right? Selling our expertise and selling our knowledge. It's all the same. The entire industry of consulting, as long as we're talking about soloists or very small organizations, the process is the same. It's just applying it to what you're doing in the moment. And things like fractional have a lot of currently we have a lot of buzzword attachment to it. And if you can ride the wave, if you can, then that's helpful because somebody else is going, oh, wait, you say you're a fractional. What is a fractional? And they go and look it up and go, oh, well, maybe that's what I need. If you say I'm a freelancer, okay, what's that mean? Does anybody even look, right? That means you're cheap, you charge by the hour, and you probably are not going to come in and get our company from 0 to 1 million. But a fractional CTO, maybe you are. Do you have a industry that you generally work with or like, or?
No, I've kind of in my career spread across a number of different industries, so it's not the industry, it's culture and product that, and I wouldn't even say product, it's more culture and that I really kind of enjoy.
Right.
I get to learn the different products and try to understand them and try to help the teams, but that's about, for me, that's kind of the key.
Right. So if you were looking for a new client, what would you search for?
Anybody who, um, anybody?
The ocean.
That's the ocean, yeah. That's a great question. Like I said, not knowing what this is or where I would go, that'd be a great question for me to answer to figure out my
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah. The idea of your ideal client profile, your client avatar, lots of different names used for this, but thinking about what that is, and that, as we mentioned earlier, this isn't something that's permanent. This is an experiment. But
Mm.
There was some discussion a couple weeks ago. I think it was David C. Baker that says this. For most people in spaces like ours, we want a target market it has between 2,000 and 10,000 people in it. So if you can't get specific enough to come up with less than 10,000 search results on LinkedIn, you're not niched well enough. And this really helps, because if one of those 10,000 people see you and see that what you say about what you do fits them, they're going to be like, you fit me. And there's no longer a question of, well, I could go find some other consultant to help me out, because you're the one that speaks directly to them. You fit their exact specific need. And we only need, on a high volume fractional that has a lot of client churn, maybe needs 10 customers a year. It takes a long time to get through 2,000 people if you could land all of them. If you can't, even still, that's but for me, I generally am looking for 3 to 4 customers a year. And 2,000 people, let's say I can capture, what, 1% of the market, so that's 20. That's going to get me through a couple of years. Why do I need to focus on anything else? If I can approach that specific market, and I still struggle with this in my own fractional business, so don't get me wrong. This is work, you know, and that willingness to say B2B, B2B SaaS, fintech property, but really it's like not even fintech, prop tech, mortgage tech, right? And data heavy and early, 0 to 1 million. That's getting you close. I mean, I suspect there's probably still 100,000 people in this. So, but figure that search result out, boil that down a little bit further and say, and people in New York City, because I'm adjacent to New York City, so I should start there. Or people in Florida, because you want to keep traveling to Florida, or whatever. Figure out a way to narrow that down further for the marketing effort. This doesn't mean you don't take work from somebody else. Doesn't mean you don't take work in a different space if it comes and you want it. But when you do your searching, when you produce your content and align it to a customer, you have a much more focused customer instead of somebody who just happens to be swimming in that ocean. If it's people swimming in the ocean without a life preserver, okay, and between 1 and 3 p.m. every afternoon, then at least I've got a smaller window of targets. Thanks, Jen. Ying. But yeah. Cool.
Well, I got something here.
No, what's going on?
Well, I just measure smoke. I got my system up and running. So this is opacity, and I got to meet with my the scientists later this week, and this I'll get to why this is important. But this is what the smoke looks like coming out of my system and how it now 20% is illegal. So right about 20%. So 6 minutes over 20%. I don't think I'm illegal. However, I got a log of it. So if someone comes to give me a ticket, I got time and date stamps on everything. So this gives a certain amount of information. Now let me change the graph and see if you see is there any more information or is it counterproductive? This one. All right. So this is, I'll try to get out of the way. I can't quite get out of the way. This is the same data with opacity and color shift added. Color shift is a company metric of the changing color of the light projected through the smoke. The red line is the color shift. It's drifting up just a little bit here, and you can't see the details, but when we get a peak of opacity, we get a peak of color shift. Now, there are peaks like, if I can get my finger, this one right here, there was no opacity, zero visible smoke, but there's a clear piece of data right here. So is the color shift useful? The scientists often say, we can't make it's ridiculous. They're focused on the opacity. And I have a tough time with that because I see there's more data here. The opacity is the absorption of light. The color shift is the scattering preferentially of blue light, which shifts the color. I mean, am I persuasive or not? I'm interested in what people say because I have to go face the scientists who sometimes
I mean, if there is a measurable color shift, it means something, especially since
That's what yeah.
It's really about is it something that we care about, which is okay, does it help? I guess that's the question is, so knowing that are these minutes, is that between 60 and 80 minutes?
Yes.
So we know that between, 60 and 70 minutes, there was a spike that didn't affect opacity, but did affect that we see as a color shift, as a blue shift. What does that tell it? What does that help us with?
Okay. That's a good question.
Because it's not a leading indicator or anything. Like, it's not, at least at this granularity, it's not that we see it in advance, or do we see it in advance?
I think it's the ratio of particles above 500 nanometers. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter. So absorption occurs at 500 nanometers and above. And then the color shift is an example of detection of particles that are 500 nanometers and below, down to 50 nanometers. So it's an indication of the small, low wavelength particles up to the large particles. So we have a high density, we have an increase in small particles. Is it like you said, is it first person or first principle?
Right.
The opacity is first principle. The color shift is an indication of we got a lot more particles we're not counting.
Right.
So there's a downside. People don't know all the particles. Your wood stove is putting out billions of particles. So it could be bad for the industry to have this data out there. And sometimes the scientists are looking out for my best interest. It takes me a while to figure out that's what they're doing.
Right.
That makes sense? So I like to show this graph to people and just say, what's their feedback on it? Because I see stuff here and I'm a guy who measures stuff. If I can measure color shift, that's important to me, but it may not be important on a wider picture.
The other potential is it easier to measure this? Can you measure this in a different situation than you can measure the opacity? So you might Is it cheaper? Is there some other reason that you would want to use this? Because clearly we could use it based on this data set alone, right? We could use this as a representation of opacity.
Well, the sensor
Scales are going to
is
be a little different.
yes. Well, actually, they on this one the magnitude is the same.
Okay.
Now some I've plotted. I can't show the stuff that University of Berkeley, but I plotted. Here's what I got. Did you plot? They're asking something about the very first peak that there's no, it's not detectable yet. A particle analyzers down the dilution tunnel can detect it. And I said, well, what's the color shift? Well, the Lux isn't working, so we didn't trust the color shift. And I have the data. I sent them back the data with the color shift overlaid. No response. But this is white light. They're using green light. I mean, it's a narrow band. It looks green when we look at it. And they're using the individual diodes. So there's 4 diodes, red, green, blue, and clear. And when you measure all 3 of them, you can do, all 4 of them, you can do intensity, which is the color, which is the opacity. And you can also do color. And the color is collected at the same time through the same diodes. It's just processed at the same time. You get 2 data points back. You get light intensity, you get color. Well, in my mind, you process both of them the same.
Right.
So yeah, I just, it sounds like you're saying it's persuasive. You look at the graph, there's data there.
What do we figure out? What do we do with the data? How does it apply to a customer? How does it apply to a scientist?
Yes, and here's little places where you're not seeing any opacity, and you are getting a small color shift. And
I mean, even in that line, even in the condensed version of what we see here, there is something happening there. So
yes.
we can see it. We see it at a different magnitude than we do the opacity. I mean, we see it in color shift at a different magnitude than we see in opacity, but it's not that there's nothing happening in opacity during that time.
It helps to know what's going on in the wood stove. So I put wood on first. I can't quite get my Jesus Christ. Okay. I put wood on here and lit the stove, and you're typically going to get high opacity.
Right. You're going to get a bunch of smoke early. Yeah.
You got a cold stove. You're just getting things going, and then it tails off. Then I put a little bit more wood, and it peaks out. So what's going on out here? We just have coals. They're just, when you look into the stove, you'd see orange rocks. That's what's happening here. And I'm saying, okay, maybe I'll put a little bit more wood and get one more set of data. So
yeah,
I
Matt.
put a bunch.
Yeah, you had a finger up.
Yeah, I'm looking at your graph, Snow, and I'm questioning the color shift. How is it possible to get a negative percentage?
Good question. Thank you for asking. So, typically through the Tyndall effect, you get a red shift more often because you're blocking preferentially blue light and you're scattering off the blue light. That shifts the color to the red. Exactly what's happening when it goes negative, I don't know, but it's not going negative that much. But that would be a shift to the blue. So, I have scientists working on this. I wish they would tell me what's going on there. I can explain the shift to the red, and there's 2 things I can tell you you've experienced in life. You've seen the sunset before. Yes, you have. Nod.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have, I was going to get scared. It normally sets and it's yellow. On certain days, it shifts when it's red, usually when there's smoke in the air. It shifts to the red. I'm not talking about the sky. I'm talking about the sun itself. And don't look at the sun. But when the sun itself actually turns red, it's due to what's called the Tyndall scatter effect, where it's scattering off blue light and it does not reaching your eyes, and you're getting red and green that's coming through. But some of the blue light is being scattered off. That's what's happening here. Now, why it shifts to the blue? I don't have a good answer for you. I wish I did. I wish I understood this a little better.
And we are measuring with this. We have an optic that is looking we are a fixed point of light. We are passing this smoke through it, and we are
Right.
looking at the color of the light passing through that smoke. And so what we're seeing when it's going below 0 then is a shift to a different direction of color.
Right.
Okay.
I'll hypothesize maybe we got a certain size particle that is uniquely blocking green light and not so much blue light. That's a way out there hypothesis. So the device is called a transmissometer. It makes certain assumptions. The light is stable for both brightness and color, and I work really hard to make that light stable. I mean, more than half of my work is making that light stable. So if this light is stable and you don't have any smoke, it produces a baseline value that's really close to 0. Now you put some smoke in, you get these upsets. When you give the upsets, I have a control system that tries to deal with the situation, get the wood stove producing less smoke. So everything's working. So that's why this line right here isn't out to here. It took care of it pretty quick. I'm just proud I got everything working because I've been having technical difficulties. I could go on about I squared C and pull-up resistors, but I don't want to do that. But if go ahead.
I was just say I hate to cut in, but I do have to jump off. But David, and no, thank you very much for your time and the conversation. I've actually really enjoying this conversation. I hate to leave it. So,
all right. Well, thanks for coming out. We'll be here every Monday.
Sounds good. See ya.
Right. Bye.
Yeah, Dr. Rapp, I can barely get her to say the Tyndall effect. I've got her to say it once. This is going out for peer review. I don't even know if they're going to address the color shift. The opacity is working so well. I think, I just have to bite it and say, let's just focus on opacity.
Right. But you're able to measure that with the same sensor.
It's measured at the same time.
Right.
At the same reading, I get 2 data points. And early in the process, so I was focusing on opacity and seeing the effect of color shift. I would take 5 readings and then average those 5 readings. Smoke is something that's very noisy. So there's certain tricks you do to make the data not so noisy. And so my trick is, and then Dr. Rapp wanted 1 sample every second. So I had to do everything in 996 milliseconds. And so it takes 5 readings and then averages or adds up all the color, divide by 5, and then the same with the light intensity. So you get 2 numbers when you get done. But she also wanted all the raw values, so I get all the raw diode values. So there's about 200 bytes that get sent out all within a second, and it all happens. My system does it about every 3 seconds. I don't know why her system, I was able to make her system do it every second. But so there's certain things you do in the hardware that no one knows about that makes the data look so good. Right. I mean, to me, this is really good looking data.
Right.
Because a lot of times you measure smoke and it's all over the place.
Right.
You don't get, you don't get any data that looks reasonable. That's a 5. No, it looks like 15 to 20, So yeah,
you're always, when you're presenting graphs, you end up having to, average things out, lots of different methods, but basically average it out for a visual effect,
right.
If it becomes a scatter plot, it's not helpful unless you're looking for a scatter plot. And when you're looking for trends over time, which a graph this size is looking for a trend over time, right? To say, here's what we did during this time, here's what we did during this time, here's what we did during this time.
So this data is plotted out just exactly as I get it on the spreadsheet. I look for several things. Is it cycling at the right amount of time? It's like 3.8 seconds with an occasional 7 seconds. So I'm trying to figure out, well, what's I have repeaters. There's multiple boxes that are receiving the signal. And so, I have the one here that's putting computer. I have another one down below that's actually controlling the fire, and it was doing a fine job. It was making a fire with very little combustion air. It was doing a fine job. But then the question is, can I explain it to people? Can I explain it to regular people?
Right.
Aren't familiar with what we're talking about here. And so a simple graph, I want to put like the 20% max on there. But sometimes that's a little distracting.
Right. Yeah. Which in this case, since you have a 20% line already established in this scale, then you can just say 20%, and there it is.
Yeah.
You don't need a second line. You don't need to make it red or something.
Yeah, it's okay if it goes over 20% for 3 minutes or so.
Right.
It's and then I'm not actually going to get a ticket. However, if someone were to get a ticket, if they had something like this, they could actually refute it, or they might be able to. If each one of these was a time and date stamp and it was logged, they might be able to go to the judge and go, look, he says I was over. This thing was below 10 that whole amount of time.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons that it would be useful. But who wants to? These things are costing me. The parts alone are $1,200 to make one. But really, what I want to get is training the control system, and that's not an easy science to go from this to control technology.
Right.
I think that this thing will train the box to operate that stove without going over 20%. It'll just know I've got to do these things to keep it from going over 20%. Getting there, I need a couple of fractionals.
Yep. I'm still curious about what, I suspect, pure speculation, having grown up with wood stoves, that spike in that 60 to 70 minute area, maybe something else is going on. Like it's sitting at pure coals and it's stable, but you opened a door in the house and created a draft, and that pulls or put air back into the stove from the vents or something. Like
talking about this one right here.
Yeah, that one.
It could be stuff moving in the stove, like the material collapsing.
True. Yeah.
I was looking in the stove at about this time, thinking about, I could have stirred it up.
Yeah.
I stirred it up. That's what I did. I was taking the coals and moving them around, seeing if I could start a fire. So that's what that was. I forgot that, and then I decided, I think I could make another fire out of this. So that's actually just moving stuff around, and that's those fine particles going out. It didn't result.
But when you stir up the red hot coals, you get a different ash in the air than you from a different smoke in the air. In effect, it's not the same thing as smoke. That particulate you get is a different type of particulate, and maybe that's what you're seeing here. Maybe that's what you can show is potentially through experimentation, you may be able to get closer to a proof, or at least some evidence to suggest that this type of particulate, we can measure when it's ash from, ash in the air versus actual smoke.
Yeah, a lot of what you're measuring is fine particulate fly ash.
Yeah.
So the first thing to come off is going to be pyrolysis products. It looks like smoke, but it's pyrolysis products that will actually burn if the concentration is right.
Right.
But people think it's smoke. It looks like smoke. People think it's smoke, but
that's what creates the creosote, right?
In my explanation is the creosote is condensation, and when you're condensing out because water is part of the combustion process. If the chimney walls are of a temperature that will actually condense,
so it's a smoky condensation.
Exactly.
builds up. Okay.
So whatever products are in the water as it condenses are
Right.
deposited on the wall.
Right. Okay.
So
Hmm.
it wet wood is going to condense more,
Right.
and so wet wood does produce more creosote. I think my system, my combustion air system, possibly makes more creosote. I don't know. But the other thing is my system will tell you need to clean your chimney because I'm not getting as much air through the system as I could before.
Right.
So you get little clues like you open the door and you get smoke back out. Well, it's
Yeah.
time to clean that chimney.
Right. When the stove becomes smoky, it's time to clean the chimney.
Yes. My chimneys, I probably do it
I
4
mean,
times.
smoky in the room, not
Right. But I probably clean mine 4 times a year.
Yeah.
I have 2 stoves. One's my test stove's a little difficult to clean. But the one in the house, I operate that probably 3 times as much wood goes through that stove, and I probably clean that chimney 4 times a year. And I got a video on how to do that. I mean, I don't like getting on the roof, and I don't like paint. I just it's a weed, or just run it up and spin it down, and then you're back up and running. But the chimney's got to be cool for me to do that.
Yeah.
You know, the wood stove has to be cool in the morning when I do that. So it's usually really early in the morning. I get the thing and run that up there. It takes me a half hour. And so I made a little video of it when everybody asks, well, does anybody want to use one of these weed eater methods? Here's the video. It's not pretty, me cleaning my wood stove, but it only takes me 30 minutes from beginning to end.
Yep.
No, that's anyway, I want to get out of this shirt and you've got it. You're at the end of your.
Almost time. So,
but thanks for reviewing my graph. I'll let you know how the scientists.
Well, good luck with it.
It'll be fine. It'll be
Yep.
fine. I just wish they'd see my point of view more often than they do.
Yep.
Have a good day.
You too. Thanks for coming.